Silent movie would be death without some kind of a soundtrack. We happen to have the noisiest silent movie ever made. We have a lot of sound effects, and we have a great score. And luckily, most of the time we have laughter as room tone. So people are laughing, you know, and so you don't notice the absence of a dialogue track. And then it's very good to use the title cards. Use the title cards for jokes, like when I mouthed some things that I cannot mouth that were in questionable taste. And then on the screen we said, "You bad boy," instead of what I really...
The accusation of bad taste is often levelled against your films.
Me and Rabelais.
You and Rabelais, indeed,
yes.
Yes,
They levelled this
yes.
at us.
You enjoy bad taste?
Yes, I live for bad taste. For good taste is... what is good taste? Good taste is a piece of chicken, a little Perrier water, and early to bed is good taste. I like a beef bourguignon, a Bordeaux, a 61 Chateau Lafite, and 2 fat girls till I'm sick. That's what I like. Of course, I do end up with the chicken and the Perrier because, I mean, we're not allowed our excesses. But I think what I do is, once when I did a record, I did, you know, Fabiola. That was a character who said, "Man, we are all singing. It's just I got the mouth." So I think, in a way, I think a lot of us think things, and I have an unwritten contract with the public to say those things, you know, those to produce those bizarre and outrageous things, but always within the limits of bad taste.
If you're in any doubt as to where the limits of bad taste are, just look for Mel Brooks and they won't be far away. Silent Movie opens in the commercial cinema around the end of January. But just to round off tonight's programme, the National Panel for Film Festivals celebrates its 10th anniversary this week. It's an organisation which promotes the showing of British-made short films of all kinds at festivals around the world. Very worthy cause, to be sure. And to celebrate the anniversary, the National Film Theatre has organised 9 programmes of prize-winning shorts next week. We've chosen one example, more or less at random, because they're all rather good. This one's called French Windows, and it was made by Ian Eames. And that's about it, except for a reminder that Melvyn Bragg will be here next Sunday with Read All About It, and I'll be back in a fortnight's time with my selection of the films of the year, which is an absolutely guaranteed way of enraging pretty well everybody. So until then, good night. Good evening. This is positively the last appearance of Film 76 before it becomes miraculously transformed into shining new Film 77, and therefore it seems an appropriate time to look back over the year in the movies. It was a year that began with the Sunshine Boys and finished up with King Kong, or if you like, it started with a sustained giggle and ended with a loud thud as the body of a large ape hit the sidewalks of Manhattan. No doubt some cynical inference about the state of the cinema could be drawn from all this, but I'm not in the mood for that sort of thing. The Sunshine Boys was actually an extremely pleasant way to start the year, being a very funny and very witty comedy by Neil Simon about the love-hate relationship between two ancient vaudeville comedians. One half of this cantankerous pair is played by Walter Matthau, whose agent and also nephew, played by Richard Benjamin, tries to fix him up with a job on a potato crisp commercial for television.
You got a fresher bag? This one is soggy.
Mr. Clark, I have 3 minutes left. Now, do you want to do this or not?
He's only got 3 minutes, Uncle Willie.
I heard the man. I'm not deaf. I'm a professional. I'm ready whenever he's ready, but the bag was soggy.
Okay, Mr. Clark, I'm ready. Now, if you'll take a bite of the potato chip and read the copy.
The what?
The copy. They didn't give you the copy? You didn't give him the copy?
The lines, Uncle Willie.
Oh, the lines, certainly. Why didn't he say so? I didn't know what the hell copy was. You ready?
I'm ready. I swear to God, I'm ready. Just bite the potato chip and begin, please.
What do I say?
Forget it. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Get me the guy with the beard or the crowd. Either one doesn't make any difference. Mr. Clark, a real pleasure seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Well, the second Sunshine Boy is played by George Burns, who in his first film for 37 years deservedly won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. The exchanges between him and Matthau take the form of spiteful wisecracks and outbursts of violent, but bearing in mind the fact that they're both playing men of about 80, somewhat impotent rage. He pulled a knife on me, Burns reports fastidiously to his daughter. A kitchen knife. It was still dirty from breakfast. But enough of this reported speech. Here are the Sunshine Boys in action during their first uneasy meeting for 11 years, possibly to arrange a comeback.
And how about you?
Thank God. Knock wood. Perfect.
I heard different. I heard your blood didn't circulate.
Not true. My blood circulates. I'm not saying everywhere, but it circulates.
I've been lucky. I'm in the pink.
I was looking. For a minute, I thought you were having a hot flush.
You know Saul Burton died.
Go on. Who's Saul Burton?
You don't remember Saul Burton?
Oh, yes. The manager of the Belasco Theater.
That was Saul Bernstein.
Not Saul Bernstein. Saul Burton was the manager of the Belasco Theater.
Saul Bernstein was the manager of the Belasco Theater, and it wasn't the Belasco Theater, it was the Morosco Theater.
Sid Weinstein was the manager of the Morosco. Saul Burton was the manager of the Belasco. Saul Bernstein, I don't know who the hell was.
How can you remember anything if your blood don't circulate?
It circulates in my head. It doesn't circulate in my feet.
Is anything coming down?
Wait a minute, wasn't Sid Weinstein that lousy songwriter who wrote Lady, Lady, Be My Baby?
That's Saul Burton.
Oh, that's Saul Burton. He died?
Last week.
Where?
In Variety.
I don't suggest that The Sunshine Boys was a totally satisfying film, because there aren't many of those about. Nor do I suggest that the 13 films which will be featured in this programme in chronological order are necessarily the best 13 films of the year. Even if I were presumptuous enough to make such a claim, you wouldn't agree with me anyway. You'd write nasty letters to me, and I don't need those at Christmas time. So all I'm saying is that this is the baker's dozen of movies which I remember with most affection and enjoyment. That being so, and with only a passing sneer in the direction of smutty efforts like Spanish Fly and the bawdy adventures of Tom Jones, let's move on to Farewell My Lovely, the latest adaptation of Chandler's novel, which starred Robert Mitchum as an overage but nevertheless impressive Philip Marlowe, and Charlotte Rampling as the mysterious Mrs. Grail. Of course, to the true Chandler enthusiast, no film of his work is ever quite good enough, and no screen Marlowe is totally convincing, because it's quite obvious that Philip Marlowe actually looked like me and not like Robert Mitchum at all. Even so, and making tolerant allowance for a few gross liberties with the text, I reckon Dick Richards' film looked and felt pretty nearly right. Here's the first encounter between Mitchum and Rampling as the plot begins to thicken.
Mr. Grail hasn't been feeding too well for some time. He tires easily. Hell with polite drinking.
Was he an old friend, Mr. Marriott?
Sort of. He accompanied me places.
Well, I guess he had to tell me something to get me to go along.
A very good-looking man to be in this kind of business.
Well, I hope you don't hold that against me.
Poor Lynn. He was rather a heel, but to die like that is terrible.
Did you trust him?
Yes?
Why?
I don't know. I trust some people. I trust you. Why don't you come over here and sit beside me?
And I've been thinking about that for some time. Ever since you first crossed your legs, to be exact.
These damn things are always up around your neck. Do you do this sort of thing often?
No, I'm usually pretty busy. At the monastery, praying with the other monks. How long did you know Marriott?
Oh, years. I liked him. I'd like to know who killed him. Would you find out? I'll pay you, of course. A lot.
A lot? Marriott lived like he had a lot. He wasn't borrowing from you, was he?
You're a little old-fashioned, aren't you? Your name's Phil, isn't it?
Philip, what's yours?
Helen, kiss me.
As a matter of interest, the peeping Tom there was actually Mr. Grail, or Charlotte Rampling's screen husband, which probably accounts for the fact that he didn't look all that happy. Serve him right for spying on his wife. Is there no trust in marriage anymore? February was rather a good month in the cinema. Apart from Farewell My Lovely, it also provided us with an excellent Indian film in Ankur the Seedling and the very black comedy of Death Race 2000. But the best picture of that month, and indeed of many a month, was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which later won 5 Oscars, including Best Actor for Jack Nicholson, Best Actress for Louise Fletcher, and Best Director for Milos Forman. It's set in a mental hospital, which doesn't seem a very promising start, but nobody should be put off by that because it's a brilliantly observed and very funny picture, which has a good deal to say about the state of society in general and society's hostile attitude towards the nonconformist in particular. This scene takes place in the common room at the mental hospital. Louise Fletcher is the nurse and Jack Nicholson is the rebellious McMurphy.
Excuse me, miss. Do you think it might be possible to turn that music down so maybe a couple of the boys could talk?
That music is for everyone, Mr. McMurphy.
Yeah, I know, but you think we might ease it down a little bit so maybe the boys didn't have to shout? Huh?
What you probably don't realize is that we have a lot of old men on this ward who couldn't hear the music if we turned it lower. That music is all they have. Your hand is staining my window.
Oh. Sorry, man. I'm really sorry.
Mr. McMurphy,
Huh?
your medication.
What's in the horse pill?
It's just medicine. It's good for you.
Yeah, but I don't like the idea of taking something if I don't know what it is.
Don't get upset, Mr. McMurphy.
I'm not getting upset, Miss Bilbo. It's just that I don't want anyone to try and slip me saltpeter. Know what I mean?
It's all right, Nurse Bilbo. If Mr. McMurphy doesn't want to take his medication orally, I'm sure we can arrange that he can have it some other way. But I don't think you'd like it, Mr. McMurphy.
You'd like it, wouldn't you?
Well,
Hold on. Give it to me.
Good. Very good.
Yummy.
Mr. Harding.
Oh. Merci.
Tell me, lover boy, why didn't you tell her to go?
In the cinema, March came in less like a lion than a lamb, with a decidedly sheepish-looking Burt Lancaster parting the Red Sea and performing other wonders as Moses. One of the most interesting bits of biblical casting since Telly Savalas cropped up in The Greatest Story Ever Told as Pontius, Who Loves Your Baby, Pilate. But the month also provided an interesting screen debut by David Bowie in Nicholas Roeg's The Man Who Fell to Earth, and a piece of delightful Indian nostalgia in James Ivory's Autobiography of a Princess. The most unexpected and charming success of the month, however, was The Slipper and the Rose, the story of Cinderella, directed quite enchantingly by Brian Forbes and starring Richard Chamberlain and Gemma Craven. It's that great rarity, a romantic British musical, though admittedly the music was by the Sherman Brothers of Mary Poppins fame, who are American, and much of the production money came from the Middle East. Well, never mind. Essentially it's British, and it made an infinitely better royal film than most of the dross that served up on these occasions to the long-suffering royal family. A duet now between the Prince and John, the traditional Dandini character, played by Christopher Gable.
Ho, ho, he, what a comforting thing to see, the traditional stone that is all my own, where my dying date will be.
In peace you'll rest beneath the beautiful family crest.
Ho, ho, he, what a comforting thing to see.
And here lies brave King Hrothgar.
Oh, the battles that he won.
He lies in state, serene and great,
still getting nothing done.
What about King Lloyd?
King Lloyd, King Lloyd. King Lloyd was lewd and lecherous, evil, cruel and treacherous.
King Roy
was mad and dreaded, till the day he was beheaded. Oh, ho, ho, what a comforting thing to know. Ho, 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 what a comforting thing to know. But remember good King Phineas, saintly, kind, and wise.
No.
He did nothing ignominious, yet beside these noble brutes and knaves and drunks and skunks he lies.
Ho, 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 what a comforting thing to know. There's a prearranged spot in the family plot where your royal bones will go.
Yes, I'll be slipped into the beautiful family crypt. Ho, ho, he, what a comforting thing for you to see. Ho, 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 what a comforting thing to.
Ho, 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 what a comforting thing to. Ho, 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 what a comforting thing to know.
Very nice. Political films usually have an uneasy record at the box office, largely, I suppose, because most people don't like politicians very much. A state of affairs which I expect is much deplored in the House of Commons and elsewhere, but what can you do? By and large, film stories about these, no doubt, noble and selfless men don't help their image too much either, because unless the subject of the film happens to be someone like Abraham Lincoln, who's so hung about with myth and legend that nobody knows what he was really like anymore, politicians tend to be portrayed as rather shifty people. All the President's Men, however, is a political film that works very well indeed, possibly because the politicians are mostly voices off and they're nearly all depicted, most satisfyingly, as heavies anyway. All the President's Men is virtually a detective story of how two young Washington Post reporters, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, revealed the facts behind the Watergate break-in. Woodward was played by Robert Redford and Bernstein by Dustin Hoffman, and we meet them at the moment when Bernstein muscles in on Woodward's story.
May I have it? I don't think you're saying what you mean. I know exactly what I mean. Not here. I can't tell from this whether Hunt works for Colson or Colson works for Hunt. May I have it, please? So many conclusions. May I have it? Yes, I'm not looking for a fight. I'm not looking for a fight either. Just aware of the fact that you've only been here 9 months. What has that got to do with anything? Well, I've been in the business since I'm 16. What are you saying? Well, I'm trying to tell you that if you'd read mine and then read yours... May I read yours? Yeah. I walked by, gave yours a glance. It didn't look right, so I just figured I'd refine it a little. That first paragraph has to have more clarity. The reader's going to understand. You don't mention Colson's name to the third paragraph. I think mine's better, but you go ahead and read it. If you think yours is better, we'll give yours to the desk. I got Colson's name up front. He was a White House consultant, and nobody knows it. Yours is better.
All the President's Men is almost a dramatised documentary as the two reporters, known for the sake of brevity as Woodstein, follow up a succession of tiny clues until eventually they're in a position to break the story, which eventually brought about the downfall of Richard Nixon. It presupposes a certain amount of knowledge of Watergate on the part of the audience, but given that knowledge, it's an absorbingly well-made film, with good subdued performances by its two superstars. Here's Hoffman going through the circuitous business of confirming a vital piece of information in the course of the investigation.
I This is Carl. I'm sorry to disturb you now, but we're going with the story that Haldemuth's the fifth man in control of the fund, and they're hassling us here. We got 3 confirmations, but if you could just help us, I'd appreciate it.
Look, I won't say anything about Haldemuth, not ever.
I understand that. We wouldn't want you to do that. We know it's against the law for you to say anything. If there's some way you could warn us to hold on the story, we'd appreciate it.
I'd really like to help you, but I can't.
Look, I'm going to count to 10, all right? If there's any reason we should hold on the story, hang up the phone before I get to 10. If the story's all right, you'll just be on the phone after I get to 10, all right?
Hang up, right?
That's right. You got it?
Yeah.
We're straight. All right, I'm going to start counting. Okay? We all right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
You got it straight now? Everything okay?
Everything's fine.
We got it.
He confirmed. What happened? I said if I get to 10 and you don't hang up, it's solid.
Did he confirm it?
Absolutely.
You gotta tell Bradley. Bernstein got another source.
The guy just is confirmed.
If there's any doubt, we can run it tomorrow.
You don't have to. The story's solid. We're sure of it.
He's just got off the phone with his goal.
Okay, we go with it.
The editor of the Washington Post was played there by Jason Robards. The early part of the summer was a fairly thin time in the cinema, although Jack Gold's Ace is High, an adaptation of Journey's End, transferred from the trenches to the air, had a lot to commend it, and so did Robin and Marion, in which Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn played Robin Hood and Maid Marian at the end of their lives. Most people didn't seem to like this picture much, but I enjoyed it rather a lot. Even more, though, I enjoyed Robert Altman's Buffalo Bill and the Indians, which I have no hesitation in identifying as the most underrated film of the year. Mind you, it got off to a bad start because I understand the producers thought they were going to get a Western starring Paul Newman as Buffalo Bill and Burt Lancaster as Ned Buntline, the legendary Western historian. What they actually got was a typically Robert Altman exercise in the debunking of America's most cherished illusions. The setting is Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, and Bill himself is a hard-drinking charlatan with a long wig and a morbid fear of birds. And as he's confronted by a totally silent Sitting Bull, he begins to look more and more seedy, as too does the American habit of creating instant myths and paying excessive homage to most unsuitable people. It's a very witty and highly intelligent film, and if it ever comes your way again, I do urge you to go and see it. This is one moment that I particularly enjoyed, the initial meeting between Buffalo Bill and Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull is played by Frank Kackwitz, and his interpreter is Will Sampson.
Well, Chief. Twilight Raid, huh? Tell me, what do you got in your mind?
Sitting Bull has said that he is here by the will of the Great Spirits, and by their will he is chief. His heart is red and sweet, for whatever passes near tries to lick him with its tongue, and the bears taste the honey, and the green leaves lick the sky. If the Great Spirits have chosen anyone to be leader of their land, it is Sitting Bull.
Halsey, you tell Sitting Bull that Buffalo Bill says his leaves can turn whichever way he wants, so long as he knows which way the wind is blowing. I think I gave him back the same kind of murky logic that he gave us. What do you think?
Halsey, what Buffalo Bill means to say is...
Buffalo Bill doesn't need an interpreter, Bert.
What Buffalo Bill means to say is that Sitting Bull is here to relive great moments of his history for the pleasure of thousands of paying customers.
Sitting Bull says that history is nothing more than disrespect for the dead.
When did he say that? He don't even look interested.
Sitting Bull's mind is rested and clear, and he is ready to negotiate.
What are you talking about? That's already been done, right, Burke?
Burke? All right.
Sitting Bull wants blankets.
Well, they're cold. You think we could ride 8, 10, 12 blankets into the deal?
Right. Sitting Bull wants blankets for all his people at Grand River.
Well, now, wait a minute. What do you think this is, an Army surplus store?
There are only 106 Hung Papa Sioux left at Grand River.
106? God, Burke, 5 years ago, we counted 10,000 Braves alone.
Mr. Halsey, the Wild West is delighted to give the blankets as a gift to those people. Burke, get a story out on this on the transmit right away. I'm sure we can get featured.
You got it. Splash it over the front pages. The benevolence of Buffalo Bill. Great human interest stuff.
Robert Altman's Buffalo Bill and the Indians, and after MASH and Nashville, he's surely established as one of the few genuine artists working in the American cinema. As Sir Hal Ramsey once said in a more dubious context about Martin Peters, I reckon he's 10 years ahead of his time. But now a real novelty, a British gangster movie called Bugsy Malone, which takes place in the lovingly recreated America of Prohibition times. And the novelty is that all the parts are played by children. A distinctly yucky proposition, to be sure, on the face of it, since all decent people will agree that, as a general principle, child actors are an abomination and a plague on mankind. But somehow, possibly through the thoughtful use of torture, Alan Parker, the director, wheedled delightful performances out of children like Scott Baio, who plays Bugsy Malone with the swagger of a sawn-off Humphrey Bogart, and Jodie Foster as a hard-boiled gangster's mole. It's a charming, lively film with a number of good musical sequences, like this one.
So you wanna be a boxer, and you pass the test. I can tell if you got it in you, I've trained the best. Well, you work and you sweat and you bet, 'cause you trained you a buzzsaw. Then you nearly lose your mind when you find that your boy has a glass jaw.
So you might as well quit if you haven't got it. Put him in the ring, Joe, look at what you found. We can use a fun joke pushing him around. We'll show him the ropes and destroy his hopes. Put him in the ring, Joe, give the guy a chance. Let him feel the sting, Joe, we can make him dance. We'll pound him to bits, then he'll call it quits. For sure, Joe.
Come on, Leroy, come on! So you wanna be a boxer, wanna be the champ. There's a golden boy inside you, not a punched-out tramp. If you listen and you learn, there's an honor you can earn in the friend here. When you do see the crown, you're a king, not a clown or contender.
But you might as well quit if you haven't got it. Put him in the ring, Joe, something new to punch. Let me have a swing, Joe, then we'll go to lunch.
We'll make it quite swift, then he'll get the drift.
Put him in the ring, Joe, chicken a la carte. Let me have a wing, Joe, tearing him apart. That chicken will crow.
Let me have him, Joe.
He's got it.
Well, apart from Jodie Foster, hardly any of those children had ever acted before. Of course, Miss Foster, who must now be pushing 14, is already a veteran movie star. Very nice for her, of course, but I wonder what kind of childhood she's had. Or is it simply old-fashioned of me to think that childhood is rather important to a child? Well, anyway, little Miss Foster, who is, I must admit, a most accomplished actress, turned up again as a 12-year-old prostitute in Taxi Driver, a tough, uncompromising film about a New York cabbie who becomes so disgusted with the filth, perversion and violence that he sees every night on the streets that he sets himself up as a one-man vigilante force with the mission of cleaning up the city. It's an extremely violent picture, very well directed by Martin Scorsese and beautifully played by Robert De Niro. It's also, curiously enough, rather a moral film. What it shows is a kind of nightmare, a projection not so much of how American cities are, but of how they could easily become if the problem of urban violence isn't tackled pretty drastically. Here's Robert De Niro trying to persuade Jodie Foster to leave her pimp and go back to her family.
So what are you going to do about sporting that old bastard?
When?
When you leave?
I don't know, just leave them, I guess.
You're just going to leave?
Yeah, they got plenty of the girls.
Yeah, but you just can't do that. What are you going to do?
What do you want me to do, call the cops?
Well, the cops don't do nothing. You know that.
Hey, look, Sport never treated me bad. I mean, he didn't beat me up or anything like that once.
But you can't allow him to do the same to other girls. You can't allow him to do that. He is the lowest kind of person in the world. Somebody's got to do something to him. He's the scum of the earth. He's the worst sucking scum I have ever seen. You know, he told me about you. He calling you names. He called you a little piece of chicken.
He doesn't mean that.
One of the year's films of which much might have been expected was The Missouri Breaks, a western with Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson, Can't be bad, surely. Well, in truth, it wasn't actually bad, but it wasn't very good either. And a far better Western was The Outlaw Josie Wales, starring and directed by Clint Eastwood. This is one of those splendid old-fashioned Westerns of the kind they don't usually make anymore. None of that psychology rubbish or limp liberalism about how the heavies only became heavies because their mothers took them off the breast too soon. Here the villains are just thoroughly nasty, and Josie Wales, harshly outlawed after the American Civil War, sets out to get his revenge on them. In the course of all this, he's joined by a marvellously disillusioned and weary old Indian, played by Chief Dan George. This is the way people react when Josie Wales hits town.
And how about you, sir? Just a few bottles left. You won't regret it. Oh, my God. It's Josie Wales!
You gonna pull those pistols or whistle Dixie?
After this, Josie Wales and the Indian escape to Texas, where they conduct an earnest post-mortem on the recent shootout.
Welcome to Texas, Mr. Lone Waddy.
I guess we ain't going to see that little Navajo girl again.
I guess not. I kind of liked her. Then it's always like that.
Like what?
Whenever I get to liking someone, they ain't around long.
I notice when you get to disliking someone, they ain't around for long either. How did you know which one was going to shoot first?
Well, that one in the center, he had a flap holster, and he was in no itching hurry. And the one second from the left, he had scared eyes. He wasn't going to do nothing. But that one on the far left, he had crazy eyes. Figured him to make the first move.
How about the one on the right?
Never paid him no mind. You were there.
I could have missed.
Well, also about this time of the year, August, came something called Clockwork Nympho, which I seem to have missed somehow. Perhaps I didn't have my dirty raincoat with me that day. But I did see and like Roman Polanski's The Tenant, and I also saw the star-studded Murder by Death, which I didn't like at all. On the other hand, I derived a great deal of enjoyment from Alfred Hitchcock's 53rd picture, Family Plot, a loose adaptation of a novel by Victor Canning about a rather phony medium, the search for a long-lost heir, and the kidnapping of lofty public personages. It's not one of Hitchcock's real chillers, not in the same category as Psycho, for instance, but it's a great deal of fun, and it's nicely played by people like Karen Black, Bruce Dern, and Barbara Harris. The authentic Hitchcock touch, that. In the late summer, the O-Men came along and started cleaning up a fortune, taking something like $50 million in no time at all. I've never quite understood why, because although it's a pretty well-made film, it's not all that special. Still, if I knew for sure what made a film a success, I wouldn't be sitting here, would I? I'd be sitting on my casting couch in some tax haven, coining money. And talking of coining money, an Australian film called Picnic at Hanging Rock did a fair bit of that in the autumn. The vast improvement in the Australian cinema, which started the year with unmitigated rubbish like Dick Down Under, and ended it with really excellent productions like Sunday Too Far Away and Picnic at Hanging Rock, has been one of the features of 1976. Picnic at Hanging Rock is a beautiful and almost mystical working of a fable about three schoolgirls who, at the turn of the century, vanished while on a picnic at a place called Hanging Rock. Here they are, just before the disappearance.
Stopped at 12. Never stopped before. Must be something magnetic.
Well after 2, I'd say. We'd better be careful. I promised Mrs. Appleyard I'd have you lot back at the college by 8.
except for those people down there, we might be the only living creatures in the whole world.
Excuse me, Mademoiselle.
Yes, Marion?
I should like to make a few measurements at the base of the rock if we have time, with Miranda and Irma.
Oh, please, Mademoiselle. We'll be back long before tea. Eh bien, allez. May I come too, please?
So long as you don't complain.
I won't, I promise. And don't worry about us, Mademoiselle. We shall only be gone a little while.
Now I know. What do you know?
I know that Miranda is a Botticelli angel.
And at this point, another Western, John Wayne in The Shootist, the story of a gunfighter or shootist who rides into Carson City on the day Queen Victoria's death is announced and discovers that he's suffering from terminal cancer. Basically, I suppose it's the fairly familiar story of the Western hero who's outlived his time. But John Wayne's excellent performance and Don Siegel's direction make of it a great deal more than that. As he faces the last few days of his life, John Wayne moves into the lodging house run by the local widow woman, Lauren Bacall, who loathes the man's trade but is grudgingly attracted to Wayne himself.
John Bernard, I'm going to send Reverend Saunders to see you tomorrow.
No, thank you.
Maybe it'll make it easier for you.
No.
Just for a few minutes.
Bond, I'm tired of people pawing over my death for this reason or that or for any reason. A man's death is about the most private thing in his life. It doesn't belong to Dobkins or Reverend Saunders or Thibodeau or you. It's mine.
I suppose that's true of your soul, too.
My soul is what I've already made of it. You reprimand me for making judgments with a gun barrel poked in my face, but it's all right for you to judge me on hearsay.
But the hearsay fits.
Maybe I'm better than you've already decided. Maybe I'm no worse than that good reverend you're always bragging about.
Or maybe you just like being a gunman. I suppose you prefer the word shootist.
I don't think of myself as either.
Oh, no, you're some godlike creature of infinite knowledge, aren't you?
I'm a dying man, scared of the dark.
Damn you. Damn you for the pain you've brought into this house.
And so the year wore on. There were a couple of good American comedies in The Big Bus and The Bad News Bears. There was a very pleasant French comedy in Cousin Cousine. There was the welcome reappearance of Orson Welles in F for Fake. There was also a good deal of gratuitous violence at one time or another in films like Track Down, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Death Weekend. What I find unpleasant about current screen violence is the unctuous way in which it's often justified by having the protagonist suffer so cruelly, while the authorities are powerless to help him, that he simply has to take the law into his own hands, or in the case of Brenda Vaccaro in Death Weekend, her own hands. The other thing that I find distinctly morbid, to say the least, is the amount of deep thought and inventiveness that filmmakers put into devising ever more frightful ways to maim and kill people. There's a kind of sadism around in the cinema that's not nearly so healthy as the clean-cut violence of the Old West. However, I did say about 40 minutes ago that the year will end with King Kong. But it will also end with the Pink Panther striking again and with Marathon Man, and I'll be talking about those when we come back in the new year. For now, let's complete the baker's dozen with Stay Hungry, a film by Bob Rafelson which didn't get anything like the attention it deserved. It deals with a rich young man in Alabama who, during the search for his own identity, becomes involved in the strange world of bodybuilding and Mr. Universe competitions. The highly talented Jeff Bridges plays our hero, and Sally Field is the girl he takes home with him after she's hurt her ankle while water skiing.
Does this hurt you when I do that?
Little.
Here, relax your foot. Did you know every part of the foot corresponds to a part of the body? Did you know that? Yeah, here's your spine right here. In your lungs over here. And here's your liver. You may not be able to feel this, but that's it. That's your liver.
Where's my mouth?
It's right here.
So I think I said once before, I found that scene highly erotic, much more erotic anyway than Clockwork Nymphos and the boudoir gymnastics of Emmanuel. The bodybuilding interest in Stay Hungry is represented by the remarkable Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's himself a former Mr. Universe and is known as the Austrian Oak, though I don't imagine too many people call him that to his face. Here he is playing the violin as Jeff Bridges gets drunk at a hoedown. And that's it, the full baker's dozen. You won't agree with them all, and indeed you may not agree with any. But it's my choice, and in various ways I derived a good deal of pleasure from all of them. But then I like going to the pictures. I even get a special sort of pleasure from really dreadful movies, and there are a lot of those about too, believe me. Still, as Film 76 fades away, before returning, of course, thinly disguised as Film 77, though naturally bigger and better and brighter than ever, all that's left for me to say is, have a very good Christmas and a Happy New Year. Goodbye. You've written several scripts before, but was there any special reason for you to write this one, to write Rocky?
Well, I felt at the time that cinema, at least the movies I had been seeing, were at an all-time low. Everything was anti-society, anti-Christ, anti-government, anti-everything, and there was no one to root for. And I also feel that films are very cyclic, so I wanted to get back into the cycle of the films of the 40s and the 50s, where people say, hey, gee, I missed the good old films, yet Hollywood hasn't taken heed and hasn't made any good old-fashioned type films where morality was at the forefront. So I took the opportunity to write this particular film, of course, being somewhat selfish because I had myself in mind for it, but that was the main motivation.
But it was fairly presumptuous of you, wasn't it, to expect to be able to star in it, because your career up to then had been small parts, right?
Yeah, that's kind of you to even say small. Yeah, they were, I was mostly what is known as atmosphere, always in the background, or the guy that was the drunk that was being stepped over in the gutter, and other lame roles. But I felt that, geez, if I was going to go down, at least into professional obscurity, I wanted to at least have the opportunity to say to myself, well, you tried. You put your best foot forward, and you didn't make it. So that's what, I guess you might say, provoked me into writing the script, because it wasn't something that I had given a lot of thought to. I just knew that I had to do it one time, and it was innate. Now, the thing was, what was the proper vehicle? I surely couldn't pass myself off, at least as a lawyer in a three-piece suit. I just don't think I have that kind of appeal, or whatever it is. So I wanted to take it much more basic, a man from the street. All right, what kind of a man? An underdog, and that being a professional fighter, I think, has that connotation to it.
But, you know, when these big wheeler dealers got hold of your script and they were told that Sylvester Stallone wanted to star in it, they must have said, who?
Right, or what?
Or what, yes. Yeah. How did you sell yourself to them?
Usually it's the old syndrome of knocking on the windows, pestering them, pressing my face in the door, honking their horn in the driveway. In other words, making a real pain in the neck out of myself. And slowly they began to see, well, perhaps he's got something. They first showed it to James Caan, Jimmy Caan, and then Burt Reynolds and Ryan O'Neal and Gene Hackman and Robert Redford, and they showed it to all these people. But I kept saying, I work a lot cheaper and a lot harder and for a lot longer. And also I think that they were taken up with kind of like the pioneer spirit of it. It wasn't going to, it's a small movie. It was made for like 1/10 or 1/15 of what they pay on, say, a James Bond movie or a Pink Panther.
It cost about $1 million, in fact.
Well, it came in at $960,000, which is what a good toothpaste commercial cost in the United States, really. So they didn't have that much to lose, but more than that, they really felt that this was kind of like a special movie that would appeal to the masses. And it's the kind of film that hadn't been done in quite a while, where there wasn't any cursing, yet you didn't miss the cursing and that type.
But after all, when you first went along with your script, I mean, they liked the script, but they were so desperate not to have you that they kept offering you increasingly large sums of money to go away, didn't they?
Right, it went up to about $265,000.
Not to appear in the film.
Right, to stay away, to get off my lawn, boy. But what they didn't count on is when a person hasn't had that type of money, they really don't miss it. In other words, if you haven't ridden in a Rolls Royce, you don't mind bouncing around in a Volkswagen. You don't have that frame of reference. But more than that, I knew that if I sold it, even for $500,000, I knew that after the money was gone, I would become very bitter for having sold out, because my one love was to at least fail on my own terms. I wanted to see if I could act, because all these bit parts that you're talking about, you really couldn't say if this kid had talent or it was just a big fake. So they were caught up in kind of like the enthusiasm. Jeez, wow, my God, well, why not? All right, we'll give them a chance, and they put a lot of clauses in the contract, like if I fell in love with my leading man, or if, you know, if I curse a nun, or if I don't brush my teeth, or whatever, I could be removed from the script after production after 5 to 10 days. But all that aside, I really think that they just wanted to get rid of me. And they said, well, let's put him in a movie. That'll get rid of him for 2 months. You know, that kind of thing.
And you did it, in fact, for a very small fee. Was it $20,000 plus a percentage?
Right, $20,000. And what we have is a Screen Actors Guild minimum, which is about $600 a week, $620 after taxes.
But were you not really quite poor at that time? Your wife, I mean, I've read all these stories about your wife going out to support you while you sat at home and pounded the typewriter. I mean, all this was true, was it?
Oh, yeah. At that time, I must admit, my life was definitely on the wane, at least professionally. I was emotionally, spiritually, physically bankrupt. We had about $106 in the bank. I had a landlord. She's a female landlord, but she was so big that when she came to collect the rent, like an entire shadow would cover the building. You know, it was like a total eclipse. And, I mean, I'm not a small man, but she was a vicious individual, and she would have thought nothing about taking my car and bending it in half if she didn't get her money. And so I had $106, the rent was $300, I had a pregnant wife. I have a very huge British dog, as a matter of fact, a bull mastiff, who would eat anything, organic or unorganic, anything. Cactus.
Including the landlady.
Oh, the landlady. I mean, feed it. What do you want to feed it? A brick. Give it a brick tonight. Anything. So I had that kind of like dilemma. So you might say I had quite a bit of fuel to sit down and write the script. I wrote the script in about 3.5 days, and only because I could hear the wolf at the door, literally. And that part was true. It really was. It was getting right down to scraping the old bottom of the barrel.
Did you not feel any doubts at all? I mean, on that first day of shooting, when you step out of your caravan or dressing room or whatever to go and appear before the camera, was there never a moment when you thought, my God, am I doing the right thing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Up until that time, I was bluffing. You know, they said, yeah, I can act. I'm a good actor. Just give me a chance. Of course I can do it. I can out-act anybody. Don't worry about it. Then they said, okay, do it. They called my bluff. Now, if I go out there and make a fool out of myself, I've wasted $1 million. I've destroyed my reputation. Any young artist that comes along and says that they'd like to make a movie, they're going to say, hey, don't you remember Stallone? You want to make a bomb? And my name would be synonymous with turkeys and bombs. They say, hey, why don't you go out and make a Stallone film? Which would mean turkey all the time, or tax write-off. Make a Stallone movie for tax write-off. So it was tremendous fear. And when that fear subsided was at the last second, as I was going out of the trailer. We ride around these trailers to the set. And it was freezing. It was about 4:30 in the morning. The winds were blowing down the street, very dramatic, and it was cold. And there was the Philadelphia City Hall clock there lit up, and the wind was blowing and mist and all that. And as I'm pulling out of stepping out of the trailer, I passed this mirror, and I said, "All right, now you're going to do it, or you're going to sit here and become a bum for the rest of your life. Are you into the character? Are you the character?" And someone outside said, "All right, Sylvester, let's go." I said, "No, you got the name wrong. It's Rocky." Bang, right away, and I felt that when it said, "Geez, I'm not Sylvester anymore. I've got to be this character." And as soon as I stepped out, and I saw the director laying in all this wind and dust, and everyone was so into it that I felt very, very safe. And after seeing the first daily, the rushes, the first day's prints, I knew we had if nothing else, I had a good home movie on my hand. A good 2.5-hour home movie that my parents would enjoy, if nothing else.
It's about boxing, of course, but it is about more than that, is it?
Oh,
is
yeah.
Is it about your own struggle, basically?
What it is I took my particular plight, which isn't unique. It's every artist or any man who has ever wanted to do something, man or woman, meaning, it's wanted to do something that has not been able to do it because of the inability to get a break. The opportunity has never knocked on their door, for example. So I said, geez, if I could take my plight as an actor and put him into a real underdog, a very physical, that being a boxer, and tell my story, like I couldn't get an agent and he couldn't get a manager, and I had no love in my life at the time, and he didn't either, and so on and so forth. So that's how that came about. So, because I really didn't think the audience, if I say I had written it about a struggling writer in California, in Hollywood, and here he is bombing around in his convertible with a suntan, but his scripts aren't selling. So what?
Yeah.
I mean, at least he has a tan, right? What do you?
And a convertible.
Right, with tomato juice or orange juice. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So this I set in a very gloomy area of Philadelphia, which is a very, very industrial type town, a muscular town, a town that has gone historically kind of like down the proverbial tubes. And that's why I chose that. Plus, it's a town, if there was ever a miracle going to happen in America, it would happen in Philadelphia, really.
And in fact, that's what happened, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
Because to complete the fairy story, I mean, it's an immense success, this film in America, isn't it?
Right, it is. It is. Some people have said, well, this could never happen, that an underdog would get a shot at the title like this. Well, I'd like to take issue with that. Of course, it happened many, many hundreds of times. Ali has done it, and it happened with Joe Louis when he had the Bum of the Month Club, and it happens all the time. So it's a very, very feasible plot. It's just the most thing that had happened to me is a little miraculous. That's the only strange thing about it. Okay. And it's a love story, more than a fight film.
But it's made you into a very big star, hasn't it? I mean, you're recognized wherever you go in the States.
Oh, God. I keep thinking about that term, though. Not to take issue again, but when I think of the word star, I think of like a ball of gas. I don't think I'd like to be considered just a performer. But it has made me, it has killed the wolf at the door, and now I have the opportunity to go on and do films that aren't always in speeding cars or about slinky women or a guy with a bad complexion or these terrible plots that they have given me. I mean, they had plots before that, like Linda in the Meat Cleaver, and terrible shows. I mean, my God.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Right, for 4 years of college for this.
And what about the Rocky? Are there going to be any more stories about Rocky, films about Rocky?
Well, I was thinking about having like Rocky on Venus. No, sir, just a very, very simple movie about a boxer who gets caught in a space capsule. And he's transported. Now, you don't believe that, do you?
Not really. In Philadelphia it could happen, but
no,
not here.
There is. I wrote Rocky as a trilogy. because I think that this type of character cannot be extinguished after one movie. He's right at the peak. When people see the film, they'll know what I mean. And entering into that second phase is almost as interesting as the first.
But aren't you then in danger of getting yourself into the other trap of acting, that you'll only be associated with the one character?
Right. That is a danger. So that won't happen, at least for, I'll do 2 films in between that. But if I had to be locked into any kind of character, I would sure rather be locked into this one than, let's say, the Count of Monte Cristo, where I have to run around in leotards for the rest of my life.
Anyway, you can worry about it while you count your money.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I only have about $400 more than when I started. So
I can't believe that. You must have made a lot of money out of this.
No, because I had a lot of bills, you might say. That big beastie landlord came back and took her share, and taxes took the rest of it. So, but like I said before we came on, I would have done the whole thing for like a donut and a tuna fish sandwich. The money meant nothing. It was the opportunity to at least prove to myself that I wasn't a liar, that I wasn't living a life of disillusionment, because that's very difficult when you think of yourself as being a very creative person, and you turn around and at, say, 40, 50, 60 years old, you realize, gee, you're not so creative, you're terrible, you've been leading a lie. And that's when I think people can become very, very vicious and cynical and go home and lock the wife in the freezer and nail the kids to the floor or whatever they do and burn the dog and get all crazy because their artistic juices have turned into very acid-like, and it just comes out the wrong way.
So whatever happens now, you feel that with Rocky, that's not going to happen to you. You're not going to go home and put the wife in the freezer. I mean, you do feel that you had actually created something.
That's true. That's true. I think that I'm going to be quite content with my life the way it is. I'm not unhappy with it at all. She may be a little unhappy with it because now it enters into that syndrome of insecurity. Because I've done a great deal of traveling. Will this change anything? I doubt it. I really doubt it. I really doubt it.
I hope it doesn't anyway. Anyway, good luck.
Well, thanks a lot. It's been a
And thank you
pleasure.
for coming in.